Hello, America, and welcome to the 8th episode of the American Restraint podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Trepanier, and I'm excited to continue on this journey with you. Okay, before we get going today, just a little recap for those of you who are new to the show. This is a podcast about how to fix America. It is largely based on my recent book, American Restraint. I believe the country is fundamentally divided and that the forces of hyper-individualism and hyper-capitalism are largely to blame. And the fix is federalism. As usual, I ask for your ratings, reviews, subscription, comments, and sharing this podcast. It really helps get the word out about the show. Okay, so today is going to be a little bit different kind of episode. It's a summary of what we've been talking about in the first 7 episodes, and a little bit of a follow-up to the most recent episode we did last week, where we did a deep dive on Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. I call this episode the top 10 reasons why we need an Article 5 Constitutional Convention now. All right, let's go. Back in the 80s, David Letterman debuted his innovative late-night talk show. It was a mix of wacky guests, stupid pet tricks, and Dave's famous top 10 list. So, in that spirit, I'd like to share the top 10 list for why we need an Article 5 convention now. It's a combination of some of the themes of the show so far, some of the questions I've received, and also some of the responses to the myths of an Article 5 convention. A quick note here. The Convention of States movement has really tried to call this an Article 5 convention, which only addresses 3 specific amendments to the Constitution: term limits for Congress, balanced budget amendment, and reduction of the jurisdiction of federal government. They say this to clarify that they're not calling for a convention to completely rewrite the entire Constitution. More to come on this point a little bit later. I'll just go ahead now and read them first so you kind of get the flavor of how they go together. Then I'll break down each one individually in a little more detail. Okay, here we go. The top 10 reasons why we need an Article 5 Constitutional Convention now. Number 10, because 80% of Americans think the country is on the wrong track. Number 9, because there is no way that Washington, D.C. is going to reform itself. Number 8, 90 million eligible voters decided not to vote in the 2024 presidential election. And 7, because DOGE was a failure. 6, most Americans would really like to know who their president is. 5, hyper-individualism and hyper-capitalism won't restrain themselves. And 4, an Article 5 convention is less scary than the swamp creatures. 3, because George Soros and Common Cause are against it. Number 2, because Congress has a 20% approval rate, yet a 95% re-election rate. And the number 1 reason why we need an Article 5 Constitutional Convention now, there is no other option. Okay, so before we get to the breakdown of my top 10 reasons why we need an Article 5 Constitutional Convention now, I just wanted to do a quick break and share one of Dave's great top 10 lists, circa 1989. We usually share a few song lyrics on the show from great 80s bands to highlight some of the themes of this show. But I think this list is pretty spot on for today's episode. I'm not going to read the entire one, but I'm just going to give you a few to give you a flavor of the top 10 reasons to vote. And this was from Dave's show, November 7th, 1989. These are pretty good. I'm just laughing again, sorry. Number 10 reason to vote. Gives you the chance to take a deep breath in a high school gymnasium. Okay, number 7, free pamphlets. Number 6, when you finish, Red Cross nurse gives you delicious cookies. Number 4, you can shout over closed voting booth curtain, "Hey, who used all the conditioner?" Number 2, so you'll feel personally involved when the new mayor gets hauled off to jail. And the number 1 reason, even though it's never come close to happening in 200 years, your one vote could make the difference. Okay, that's good stuff. All right, now back to the show. A little breakdown behind the top 10 reasons why we need an Article 5 convention. Now, number 10, because 80% of Americans think the country is on the wrong track. We've talked about this one on the show a lot. The vast majority of the citizens of this country know something is wrong. The country's divided, our system of government is broken, and the vast majority of Americans know that status quo solutions and status quo politicians won't and can't help us. An Article 5 convention breaks the status quo. 9, because there is no way that Washington, D.C. is going to reform itself. Washington, D.C. is the most powerful imperial city in the history of the world. The vast majority of those who live in or near to Washington, D.C. like the swamp just the way it is. But because there is so much concentrated power and money in the swamp, asking Congress, the presidency, the Supreme Court, and the bureaucracy to restrain and reduce their power is an impossible ask. An Article 5 convention will restrain the concentration of power in D.C. Number 8, 90 million eligible voters decided not to vote in the 2024 presidential election. This number is insane. More people decided not to vote rather than to vote for Trump or Harris. And 100 million eligible voters refused to vote for either Trump or Biden in 2020. Go back to 2016, it's the same story. 90 million adults didn't vote. This is not exactly a ringing endorsement of our current federal government. This is not the consent of the government. This is not the consent of the governed. As more and more American adults refuse to take part in our system of government, the fabric of our country becomes more undone. An Article 5 convention offers a fresh new start for millions of we the people. Number 7, because DOGE was a failure. Don't get me wrong. DOGE was very, very well intentioned. Elon Musk and his team tried to identify fraud, corruption, and waste in federal spending. However, those who benefit from a huge federal government and their partners in the media fought like tooth and nail against every single effort to reduce the size of our federal government. They even resorted to real domestic terrorism against Tesla owners and Tesla dealerships, and they probably won. Because Elon left DC with only a recommendation to reduce the size of the federal government by about $150 billion. Remember, this year's budget deficit is going to be about $2 trillion, so this attempt is a drop in the bucket. An Article 5 convention includes a balanced budget amendment to force DC to reduce costs permanently. Number 6, most Americans would really like to know who their president is. I realize the timing of this one is tricky because Joe Biden has recently announced he has cancer, and he should receive all the treatment possible to help him fight this disease. However, the fact remains that no one really knows who the president of the United States was from 2021 to early 2025. It certainly wasn't Joe Biden, who exhibited signs of dementia throughout his entire presidency. Most likely, it was key advisors in the White House and other members of the bureaucracy who were running the presidency for 4 years. But that's not how the Constitution was designed at all. An Article 5 convention will strip the federal government of much of its current powers and return them to the states just like the 10th Amendment says. And we'll have much less chance of the deep state running a shadow presidency again. Number 5, hyper-individualism and hyper-capitalism won't just stop themselves. The core reason America is divided and broken is because Americans have lost the ability to restrain themselves, and businesses have lost interest in helping strengthen American communities and families. Hyper-individualism asks the question, but what about my needs? Hyper-capitalism only cares about more profit, more growth, and more monopoly power for members of the oligarchy. An Article 5 convention will provide restraint by breaking up the concentration of power in D.C. and allowing states to finally push back against hyper-individualism and hyper-capitalism. 4. An Article 5 convention is less scary than the swamp creatures. I get it. An Article 5 convention is something that most people don't know about. We've never tried to amend the Constitution in this way. It has always been Congress, someone else. But Article 5 is in the Constitution for a reason. The Anti-Federalists knew that we needed checks and balances against a federal government that would likely turn into a power-hungry entity like we now see in D.C. But Convention of States has a well-thought-out, well-endorsed, specific plan to make 3 amendments to the Constitution: congressional term limits, balanced budget amendment, and reduce the size and scope of the federal government. An Article 5 convention will be new and different, but it is a lot less scary than the swamp creatures. And the number 3 reason why we need an Article 5 convention now. This one's easy. Because George Soros and Common Cause are against it. George Soros is the classic oligarch who literally made his fortune betting on government instability. He's an agent of chaos. His MO is to fund organizations like Common Cause, which promote 2 things: big government and social unrest. George Soros makes money off both of these efforts. That is why there are so many myths and fictions on the Common Cause website about Article 5. Seriously, what are they afraid of? Oh yeah, that the out-of-control, ineffective, uber-expensive federal government will have less money and power? That's probably it. Don't trust Soros. Don't trust Common Cause. Number 2, because Congress has a 20% approval rate, yet a 95% re-election rate. Congress is mostly incompetent at this point. Forever, Congress members like Schumer, Pelosi, and McConnell have made millions and amassed power as they have way overstepped their welcome. Most Americans realize that Congress is broken, and we need both fresh blood and new ideas to make Congress work again for the people. The only reason a group of people like Congress can return to their pork-laden jobs at a 95% re-election rate while being disliked by 80% of Americans is because the system is broken and rigged. An Article 5 convention will force term limits on Congress. What is Congress afraid of other than losing power, influence, and money? And number 1, and the final reason why we need an Article 5 convention now. There's no other option. Seriously. What other options are there to fixing America? A different president? How has that worked out the last 50 or so years? Different people in Congress? Or the bureaucracy? Same answer. They won't leave without being forced out. A third party won't make a difference either. The problem is structural. Hyper-individualism and hyper-capitalism are the root causes tearing this country apart. And an Article 5 convention is the first step of restraint, America. We need change, and this is the only solution that will do it. The call for a second constitutional convention will generate strong opposition. Many people will think such an idea is not only naive, but dangerous. But no matter how the critics explain their position, there can be only one argument against holding such a convention: that the American people cannot be trusted to participate in a national discussion about the political health of their nation. Sorry, this was from a noted constitutional scholar. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And as a call to action today, please visit conventionofstates.com, sign the petition, and learn more. There really is no other option to fixing America. Keep hope alive and make it a great day, America. See you later.